Let me tell you, there is nothing new on the planet. Many of these skills were well understood by ancient cultures, certainly by the ancient Romans, certainly in medieval times. And many of the skills have only been lost over the last, say, 50, 60 years, since the Second World War. These are lost areas of knowledge. And when people have them retweaked, when they look at their habitual patterns, look at the new patterns that they should be doing, people go, oh, I feel released. I get this. I understand it. I can hear, feel, see the difference. And they love it. It's very rewarding.
Welcome to the TalentGrow Show, where you can get actionable, results-oriented insight and advice on how to take your leadership, communication, and people skills to the next level and become the kind of leader people want to follow. And now, your host and leadership development strategist, Halelly Azulay.
Talent growers, this is a treat today. I have a very unusual guest. I think that you're going to love her, and I think that she's going to show you some things that you might have never thought about. We talk about leadership and her coaching of leaders and her unique perspective coming from the world of opera singing and what she understands about nonverbal communication and most specifically vocal communication, the way that we use our voice and our breath and how that has a tremendous effect on our ability to be influential and to be good leaders. She gives lots of specific examples, including that very specific actionable tip at the end. So I can't wait for you to listen to my Australian friend, Dr. Louise Mahler, and this episode of the Talent Grow Show. I'm Halelly Azulay, your leadership development strategist here at Talent Grow. So let's dive in. Welcome back, Talent Growers. How can you build an expertise and presence and influence with an economics degree and majoring in statistics? That's a good question. Maybe if you spend a decade singing opera in Europe with some of the greatest divas of our time or a soloist's contract at the Vienna State Opera. Well, our guest today, Dr. Louise Mahler, says that it was her master's degree in organizational psychology and her PhD in business that brought it all together to make her one of the most original thinkers in business communication. Louise is a guest presenter for leaders and leadership teams worldwide and coaches federal politicians, heads of international business, and rising corporate talent when the need to give voice arises. She makes regular TV appearances, has a series of videos with the Australian Financial Review, and is a constant feature for comment on radio. Her book, Resonate, with Penguin Random House, is for people who need to be heard. So, we're in the right place today. Louise has sung in English, German, French, Italian, Spanish, Russian, Norwegian, and Czech. So hopefully our show today will be in English, although with that wonderful Aussie accent. Louise, welcome to the Talent Grow Show.
Hi.
Louise is from Australia, and I just had the opportunity to meet Louise this week. She attended as a guest one of my mastermind groups that I attend here locally in the LA area. And Louise is speaking and keynoting at a conference here in LA, all the way from Australia. It was so fortuitous that she and I met. And as soon as I heard her story, I was like, oh my goodness, Louise is coming on the show. So Louise, before we get into the wonderful ideas that you have and insights you'll share with our listeners, I always ask my guests to describe their professional journey very briefly. Where did you start and how did you end up where you are today?
Well, I started with an economics degree when I left school, and that was in statistics, and then made the very obvious leap into opera singing. God knows why, but that's what happened. And it just, it seemed like life upon the wicked stage seemed like a fabulous idea. And then I won a lot of money and went to Europe, and I ended up at the Vienna State Opera on a soloist contract. And, that was a very exciting time. And it was a time of study with a music degree, postgraduate in opera, letters in music, and a lot of practice up on stage, actually performing and meeting some of the, well, all of basically the greatest singers of our time in that incredible opera house in the world. But really, I just needed something more. And I wanted to get back into the real world. So I actually went back into business and I did my master's in org psych and PhD in business because I could see a need for people to communicate in the opera of life.
Very interesting. That is definitely a very unusual transition, both into and out of opera and where you've ended up today. And now you speak from the stage and on media and write, and you work with a lot of corporate leaders. What type of work do you do?
Well, yes, I speak obviously for large groups and I call that the inspirational work. And then I do extended keynotes training, which is where we learn the skills. And then I do coaching to embed the knowledge. We get one-on-one so that we can really embed the habitual patterns that we need.
Do you focus on a particular skill set or type of training or knowledge when you do that?
The work's based around, I guess I see it as 3 circles coming together. And the first circle is the psychology of who we are, who we are as an individual and whether we have performance anxiety, which is something that is very, very common. And also the psychology of the people around us. What do they need? What do they know? What do they want? What are their worries? What are their fears? So the psychology of a situation we need to understand. The next thing is the skills. So the skills of where we lock our expression, our breath, our throat, our mouth, our gestures, our body movement, our eye contact, they're all the skills that we do. And then thirdly, the structures around which we work. So structures for presentation, structures for giving feedback, structures for handling an emotional situation, structures for handling a situation where there is no emotion, but there will be by the time you've said it. Structures for just answering, structures for disengaging from a scenario. So basically, it's the 3 areas of psychology, yours and theirs, skills, our habitual patterns, and structures for every situation that we might come up against.
Are there some problems that you see more prevalently for leaders that you work with?
Oh, you bet. Look, there is a recurring pattern of people who've trained in their field of expertise. They're experts at what they do, and then, of course, they take on a leadership position. And what they find is that they don't understand their habitual patterns and how that is blocking their communication. And they have basically no training whatsoever in the field of influence. And what that leads to is a massive drop in confidence. So people lose their confidence. And then the problem is, if you've lost your confidence, well, guess what? You can't buy confidence. So, this is why the work satisfies that need.
Yeah. And it sounds like new leaders, when they lose confidence like that, then it becomes even more difficult for them to be influential and to lead others. So it's almost like a vicious cycle.
Absolutely.
And I totally get it because in my work developing leaders, I see that lots of times people are promoted because of their technical expertise, which is not at all the same as leadership capability and leadership capacity. Now, they might be able to build that, but a lot of times they're not really given a lot of support for that.
More common than you might think is that people who are on the autism spectrum, or even you may say that in our digital world, we have created autism. And so, an example of the fellow I'm working with at the moment, who's come up and up and up and up through the ranks because of his commercial expertise, is now one of the top 15 executives in a major organization, national organization, very treasured for what he does. And now they're saying, please don't come to meetings.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we don't like you. We don't like the way you respond. We don't, you don't handle your communication well. And this poor guy goes, well, what am I doing? I don't understand. So what I'm able to do is point out his habitual patterns and then start to teach him literally empathy. and how it works and what he needs to say and how he needs to go with people, not constantly confronting them and not constant anger and blockage. And, what I find is when people are faced with this information, they don't go against it. They say, oh, heavens, thank you so much. I never knew that. I never knew that. And they go away practicing, and it changes their lives.
Yeah, a lot of times that self-awareness is the first step to change, right? I mean, as long as they're willing to be open to it and to receive it. Sounds like this guy was.
It's self-awareness, and then it's new structures of engagement, new skills of engagement as well, and they get to practice them, and they don't realize how blocked they are. Another gentleman that I work with, he's taken over an executive education program. This is a top consultancy, and they come back to him and they say, oh, you're not up to the task. Now, there's nothing about this man's qualifications that doesn't say he's up to the task. What happens is that when he gets in front of an audience, he crosses, he blocks himself. And he had no awareness whatsoever of how he was folding his arms across his body, bowing his head, doubling his posture over. Just no idea. And opening him up to the audience then opens your mind, and it has this whole spiral of the mind-body-voice connection. Your voice begins to shine, your body opens, and your mind opens to the group.
Sometimes a very simple shift in something as basic as uncross your arms can change how your mind sees things.
As simple as uncross your arms. That would be, on my deathbed, my one major thing. Open your arms.
Are there some others that you see a lot?
Well, people hiding their hands. We see with Trump an example of always revealing the hands. But, it's not just Trump who did that. Jesus did it. Always the palms of the hand forward, the arms open. This is a gesture of trust. There are no pennies between the fingers. Keeping the palms and hands revealed at all times. On the table, out by your side, never under the table, behind your back. This is how you do it.
Yeah. Now, do you find any differences, just out of curiosity, between men and women in terms of the challenges that they're experiencing and the reasons they bring you in?
Yeah. You can't underestimate the psychological effects of what women have been through their lives to block them. So there are two problems. One is that we're behind the eight ball. And two is that by nature, by what's called nonverbal studies and our understanding of what leadership is, we don't fit that model. For instance, the voice of leadership is low, slow, and loud. Well, women's voices are an octave higher than men's on average, which means that the minute I open my mouth, people say, oh, that's not the voice of leadership. So, one is that we're like whipped dogs from the emotional trauma of being a woman in a society. And the other is that we're behind the eight ball anyway. So the answer with women is, yes, it's a big problem. And we have to be perfect, absolutely perfect at what we do, or we're not listened to.
Seems fair enough.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how you experience this, but I know that in the world of work where I'm brought in a lot, there is an increase in how much of communication and leadership and influence happens virtually or remotely. We're working with people who are so dispersed, so far away from us. So we're often having to only use, our voice or video if we're really advanced and we're thinking about this. But often people are trying to do it via written format, which is terrible. So do you have ways to work around it if that's something you're finding too?
Oh, you bet. Have we forgotten our skills of voice? I have this area of vocal intelligence, which is obviously very informed by my background in opera. And it says that the voice is an outcome of what happens in the body, and the body is an outcome of what happens in the mind. And we need to realize that our voice is a thermometer of our mental state. So it tells a tremendous amount psychologically, and voice is hugely manipulable. So where we go wrong is that we think we have a voice that is, maybe like this. We talk with no range with a certain vocal tone, and we don't realize that we can change it and the psychological messages it sends. So for instance, what we need to do is get the voice out. Get the voice out so we know where our natural voice flows, sits in its pitch range, and the air is unblocked as it comes out. Now, the psychology of air being unblocked is that it says, I am willing to communicate to you and give to you. When people withdraw their air, you can actually hear it. And the worst case scenario is what's called vocal fry, F-R-Y. And vocal fry sounds like that.
Oh,
now,
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, you do. You hear it a tremendous amount. Vocal fry, the analysis of that is that it is a malfunction. And it's a malfunction because there's actually 1/6 of the airflow has to come out of my body for my vocal folds to malfunction like that in vocal fry. And what the psychological message when people do vocal fry is, I don't want to be here. I don't want to connect with you. I don't want to touch you with my air as I vibrate the air out of my body. So I go to vocal fry. It is something that young women in America just do a tremendous amount.
Yes.
And it's a total career limiter. Some people do it permanently. I was in a shoe shop the other day and I burst out laughing with a group of 3 women sitting beside me, and they'd obviously come from a fabulous area. They're enormously wealthy, buying up shoes, and they're all sitting there doing vocal fry. and I just said, girls, you're killing yourself. Your potential in leadership is between 0 and nothing to do vocal fry. It's a terrible thing to do. And many of us don't do it all the time, but maybe we do it at the end of a sentence. And if you're in sales and you're on the phone and you're saying, look, I think, Halelly, this project is really important for all of us to get involved in. And we go to vocal fry. What you do there is you lose your impact 100%. So, there's that with voice. We have to have enough air coming out to touch people, to literally caress them with our sound, because sound is a physical force. It hits the eardrum and vibrates it. It doesn't just hit the eardrum, it hits the skin and vibrates the skin. Now, what that then leads to is the fact that vibrating the skin is a massage. And when you're massaging people, if you want to maintain their trust, you have to keep your voice flowing. So people who break their sound, what that does to the listener is it instills a lack of trust. It instills mistrust. We suddenly feel awkward as that air hits us in an awkward way. And
Louise, are you giving an example? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, we either have a malfunction or you're exemplifying it.
And that's what happens. We think there is a malfunction because the air stops flowing. So we have to realize when we're virtual that you take a breath, yes, but you keep the air flowing, and that is the voice of trust. Trust continues to the end of the sentence. Now, even though we're virtual, to keep the air flowing, one of the major tools that we have are our arms. In fact, gestures guide air. So you may be virtual, but you need your arms to be moving to guide the air to the end of the sentence. You don't want the airflow to drop off. Because it loses its impact. So, major things, give the air to show that you're giving, flow the air to show that you have trust, and have the air come out of your body in an unblocked way, which shows that you have no psychological blockage.
This is fascinating. And I don't know if this is something that you can explain because you were saying how you have a process or a structure. And I'm sure that there is a structure you teach for how to unblock or to reverse the vocal fry. And I don't know if that's something you can convey here without a visual, but I would love for you to give us a tip or two like that.
Yes. Well, there are, I talk about the 7 blockages in my book, Resonate. And certainly when it comes to the diaphragm, the first one, many people are holding their diaphragm and they don't realize they're holding their diaphragm and they're trying to relax. But the unconscious mind is stronger than the conscious mind and it refuses to relax. So actually the technique that I teach with the diaphragm is not to relax, but actually to kick the diaphragm free with an exercise I call Kapalbhati. And then at the throat, there are techniques which singers use to help the throat be open. And one of those is that they've proven that when you lift your cheeks, you actually retract parts of the throat called false vocal folds, which are very detrimental to sound. So smiling is one of your major tools. With vocal fry, which happens when there's no air coming out, give air and open your mouth. So many of us are thinking with our mouth shut. We're doing everything to block that air flow. So open your mouth, gesture, move, get the air out of your body. We need eye control, as I mentioned. We need our hands, and we do need to move our body. So the next thing is, of course, where do you move your body? You can't just wander. Where do you move your gestures? You can't just wave your arms. So we need to start to then learn about anchoring gestures, anchoring spaces, not to repeat movements. So it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But basically, there are skills to unblock every single blockage that happens with our body and our voice, and therefore is a blockage to mind.
This is amazing. So many aspects of things that we might have some intuition about, but really no formal training in for almost anyone. Unless you're taking vocal lessons, you probably have never even thought about this.
No, I absolutely never thought about it. And let me tell you, there is nothing new on the planet. Many of these skills were well understood by ancient cultures, certainly by the ancient Romans, certainly in medieval times. And many of the skills have only been lost over the last, say, 50, 60 years, since the Second World War. These are lost areas of knowledge. And when people have them retweaked, when they look at their habitual patterns, look at the new patterns that they should be doing, people go, oh, I feel released. I get this. I understand it. I can hear, feel, see the difference. And they love it. It's very rewarding.
Fabulous. Well, do you think that there's anything different in Australia versus in the US, or is it culturally based?
Yes, I think that Australians are worse. We have, in America, you have nonverbal studies and a lot of schools of nonverbal studies. So people are at least looking at the area of perception of others and trying to pander to that. In Australia, what we've done is we've rejected nonverbal studies because it says to us lack of authenticity. So, for instance, if I say don't fold your arms because you look blocked, an Australian will say, well, I don't care, I feel comfortable. So we maintain those blockages and maintain a right to do so. And what I do is have to find a different impetus, which is that by actually folding your arms, you're holding your diaphragm, which means you can't breathe. You can't bring the best of yourself. So I look at my work from the two sides of nonverbal studies, the perception of others, and vocal intelligence, which is your authenticity. And that actually helps Australians make a quick change. But we are behind the 8 ball because we reject nonverbal studies. Australians won't be told what to do. They have to find they go, mate, I just bring who I am to the engagement, I just am who I am, and you have to say, well, that person you think you are is actually not who you are. It is a blocked self.
Oh, wow. You're swimming against the stream, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, there's nonconformist kind of culture. It just comes back to bite you when it comes to things like this. I actually had a workshop once. I was giving a workshop on communication, and I had a young man. We were practicing critical conversations, and he was sitting back in his chair, leaning all the way back with his legs kind of up and crossed. Yes. And I said, are you going to have the conversation? And we were role playing. And I said, I know this is not for real, but in real life, would you have a conversation this important sitting in that way? And he said, I don't believe in that nonverbal stuff.
That's right. That's it.
Well, the person reading your nonverbal signs believes it because their brain is hardwired to notice that, whether they think about it or not.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do a lot of handling difficult situations, and I look at the processes for handling it, and then your airflow and how you manage it, your gestures, how you manage it, your eye contact, how you manage it, your body, how you manage it, and put that together in a table, the different stages, the different skills that go with it. And it's life-changing. And people can, hear, see, and feel the difference. And one of the other skills I'd love to mention is that not only do we give out our air to show giving, but we can work the vocal folds so that they never close. And what this gives you is a breathiness, so you get a constant airflow where the air just is constantly escaping through the voice. And that's a really great vocal tone for extra giving. So in difficulty, to come in and say, oh, that's terrible, is the way to do it. And many people crossed over the legs, across the arms, across the throat is crossed, and we'll go, oh, that's no good. That's no good at all. And it has a completely different impact. It's not about the words. And you can play that back for people and show them how that's differently perceived, felt, and the air doesn't mix. It doesn't connect.
Wonderful. Oh, I would love to talk to you so much more. We're almost done, and you're going to share one specific action. But before you do, what's new and exciting in your horizon these days?
Oh, new and horizon in my excitement is the international interest in the work, so to speak, and coach internationally. And also to go deeper with tribes, to actually begin to have masterclasses, dinners where we discuss, and the tribe together and on the internet discussing, asking questions. I've been studying this all my life from many different perspectives in life, and work with it day on day with people, and I love to answer questions. And what I find is there is an answer to every challenge that you have. We just haven't got our minds open to that. So new to me is spreading the web internationally and spreading it deeper. That's what's new and exciting.
That does sound exciting, and I know that you are going to conquer the world. Well, time is almost up, so let's give our listeners one very specific action that they can take today, tomorrow, this week to improve and upgrade their own leadership skills or communication skills, whichever angle you'd like to take.
Breathe and open your arms to help you do that. So I would love people, every time you initiate sound, to open your arms wide against your body. Now that means the elbows have to be off your body, the palms are facing forward, and to walk around giving your air and saying to people, hi, hi, hi. And every time you say that hi, you open your arms. Hi. Just walk up to order your coffee for the day at Starbucks. Walk to the counter and say, hi, could I have a coffee, please? Hi. And as you do that, open your arms, give your air, and get that practice of air flowing out of your body, touching other people, reaching, connecting, making that physical impact. Breathe.
So simple, so actionable, so brilliant. Love it. Louise, how can people stay in touch with you, learn more about you and from you? What's the best way?
Well, I've got my usual social media, Dr. Louise Mahler, LinkedIn, Facebook page, and my website is www.louisemahler.com.au. The AU at the end there for Australia.
Great. And you have so many resources on your website. And I know that, and we will link to your book and to all of those things in the show notes page. So definitely, I hope people will go and check out everything else that you have to offer. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time and wisdom today, Louise.
Thank you.
Wasn't that so different, so unusual, so interesting? I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. I sure did. I think that Louise is fascinating, and she brought up so many interesting points, but I don't know if you were able to see how she demonstrated what she was talking about throughout. So I'm actually really super glad that this is an audio format podcast, because it allows us to hear what she's talking about. without seeing her, but really hear the vocal qualities changing as she's demonstrating the different problems and solutions that she described. I hope that you'll take the very simple action in your very next conversation that Louise suggested. And as always, give me feedback. Let me know what you thought about this episode. What's your biggest takeaway? How have you tried some of what Louise just taught you? And what would you like to hear about next? I am always open to your feedback. I'm Halelly Azulay, your leadership development strategist here at TalentGrow. And this has been another episode of the TalentGrow Show. Thank you for listening. And until the next time, make today great.
Thanks for listening to the TalentGrow Show, where we help you develop your talent to become the kind of leader that people want to follow. For more information, visit talentgrow.com.